Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quinten Krzysko, Sunny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce, bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
And welcome back to another episode of Bears on Tap. Now, I want to start this one off with a quote, a shout out to a quote here. And let's see. It's from Caleb Williams talking about the impact of Thomas Brown over the last 2 weeks. Caleb, quote, says, "He has a certain aura to him that allows you to play free." Williams said Brown's message towards the end of the game was, "Go be Superman." So I say to you, Mr. Ron Luce, go be Superman.
And Superman he was today, Q. I think, this is a weird game because, I'm pissed they lost, especially because of the comeback at the end. But that boy's got S on his chest, and there's a red cape attached to it, too. He is Superman. It felt like he was Superman. I think today's game was what every Chicago's Bears fan was waiting for with Caleb Williams. It was, we need to see, just like, Williams is talking about Thomas Brown's aura. We got to see Caleb Williams' aura. That felt like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers out there just carving people up at the end of a game when it matters most. That ball that he fit into DJ Moore to get them in field goal range to send the game to overtime. Insanity. He really looked like Superman today. And I'll tell you what, if Thomas Brown is telling him to go be Superman, I think we have a superhero on our hands, Q, because he looked like one out there today, and it was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really, really resonates with me after this game, and they lost, and we'll get into the sorrows that we'll get into the fire Matt Eberfluses of it and all that, but the thing that resonates with me the most about today is everyone on the Bears roster seeing that and saying, this is something that Kyle Long tweeted at the beginning of the season, right? He said, when everyone on that roster realizes what they have in Caleb Williams, the level of play across the whole roster is going to change because they know now that they are one fluke, onside kick away from a miracle at all times. And they don't want to be the guy. No one on that team wants to be the guy who let them lose because something went wrong that made it impossible for Caleb Williams to do what he did today to force overtime. Granted, today, the guy who ended the overtime was probably Caleb Williams if we're not putting on the defense. But everyone on that roster should feel after today so much more empowered to say, we just need to give this kid a chance. We need to do everything we can to give him a chance because he's doing some awesome stuff for us right now. And that's not to take anything away from a guy like DJ Moore. That touchdown that DJ Moore had, that was a screen pass. Caleb didn't have a lot to do with that play.
Right.
He had a lot to do with the drive, but that play, that was DJ just making plays. But ultimately, it's a bittersweet moment as a Bears fan, right? They lost another division game. But I cannot help but feel optimistic coming out of it. And I know we said the same thing last week to some degree, probably a little more hate in our voices over it, but there's a lot to feel good about coming off this loss. And I'm right there with the rest of everyone. I am tired of finding the good in losses. It is tiring. It is exhausting, but it's where we are. And all we can do is make the best of it. I always say, don't worry about things you can't control. I got no control over this. I can't get too upset over it, but I can find the good. And Caleb Williams made that really easy today.
Yeah, it's very clear that Caleb Williams is the good. And I think you've seen it too. You hear it in Sonny's comment here. We have our quarterback. They do. The Chicago Bears have their quarterback. And it's weird having that guy, because I'll even admit, I don't ever think even Jay Cutler ever truly felt like that guy. Like, yes, he was a great quarterback. He was probably the best quarterback the Bears have ever had up to that point. And even like there was things that he did on the field that, were like, oh, okay, he's still human. This is the first time it really felt like today that the Bears have that quarterback that we're so used to watching the Bears get killed by. And I think that's what's so satisfying about today's game, because you really look at it. I mean, the defense got carved up. Tyreek Stevenson / Terrell Smith, whoever's opposite Jalen, gets torched week in and week out. My best bet for anybody going forward, shout out to our on-tap bets boys, whoever the second receiver is on the team that the Bears are playing, bet him for a big day and a touchdown, because that's almost always what happens. Jordan Addison had a great day today.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson didn't do shit today. It was everybody else on that defense on that offense, pardon me, that helped Minnesota win this game.
I didn't even realize Jefferson did. It felt like so much more, because there was an offensive pass interference that took something big off the board for him. And maybe there was a defensive pass interference that the Bears got called on or something like that, that took a play off the board, or like that he never caught, but like, yeah, I think there was a call like that. So it felt to me like there was more, but I mean, that's the impact. If you want to take Justin Jefferson away in this league, Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson are going to eat. That's just the way it kind of goes when you're playing the Vikings. You either live with what you make everyone else beat you, or you make sure he can't beat you. But either way, the Vikings tend to end up with points. And man, you say that you feel like you've never seen a game like this before. And I can't, during the game as it was happening, I couldn't help but like think back to that 2009 game against the Vikings in like week 16 or week 15 with Jay Cutler. And it was like
Devin Aroshmadu.
Yeah, Devin Aroshmadu, baby. That's the guy. Where Cutler, and I didn't even remember it that clear. I just remember Cutler winning in overtime with the throw to Aroshmadu. Mm-hmm. But even that, like, I just pulled it up because I was curious. Like, was that like as heroic in my mind as it was? And it's not. Cutler and the Bears took a 7-point lead with 5 minutes left, and then they allowed the Vikings to tie it up before going to overtime.
Yep.
And the Bears won that one. So that might be the difference there. But like, that's what it reminded me of today to a degree. But I think that there was I don't know, that 2009 season was so rough because it was just like Cutler led the league in interceptions. I think it was week 15 by then. The Bears were eliminated from everything. Probably didn't feel as hopeful as I remember, because what I'm remembering is probably just like almost a little Stockholm syndrome of like, he finally showed something. But like, this is different. But let's get into a few more tweets that I had kind of marked here as things that I wanted to touch on. And one was from our friend Nick DeMeo, writer over at OnTap Sportsnet. He replied to me to one of my tweets with, "It's good that we can criticize single plays versus entire games or entire stretches of the season with Caleb." And I thought that was a really good perspective to put it into, because like, he's right. Like, we're not, and there were stretches in this season we could criticize, right? There was like a 3-game stretch there where it was rough, but today it was like, there's only a few plays that you can really sit here and nitpick on from Caleb. I mean, the dude dealt with like 7 drops today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he probably would have had a better day. I think that's the crazy thing. He had 340 and 2 touchdowns today.
Yeah.
Like, he probably could have had even better day. 360, 375 maybe. I mean, that's crazy. And yeah, I mean, that is a really good perspective. Like, I've never really even thought about it that way until you brought that up from Nick. That's a hell of a quote from Nick, because yeah, there were stretches, right, with Justin Fields. And don't get me wrong, I think 2022 Justin Fields was incredibly fun. And I think I'll always look back on that run and be like, yeah, he didn't do a ton with his arm, but what he did with his feet that season was insanity. I think right now, just what we're experiencing with Caleb Williams is it's so refreshing to just, you know, just like you said, criticize individual plays. And Tim's saying here, well, he almost had 3 picks, but he didn't.
There was one of those I thought was actually like I wanted to knock him for, but if I remember right, it was late in the game in desperation time, and that's something I can live with.
Oh, 100%. Because at least, there's the ability now of seeing Caleb be aggressive. And, what we constantly, I feel like a broken record thinking about it right now, of how we've sat here on Bears on Tap and bitched about the Eberflus, every drive ends with a kick. Take care of the football. Don't be aggressive. It was nice to see him making some of those aggressive throws. Yeah, like Tim says here, at least taking shots, especially when you're down. You got to risk it to get the biscuit that late in the game when you're down points. And he did. And he let it rip. And we're starting to see that elite arm talent that everybody has talked about since he was, in the draft process. And we're starting to see him take those steps further and further and further. It makes you wonder, like, if he was putting together a couple of these games a few weeks sooner, I think he's even further along, and he's going to keep learning, right? You said it, Q. I think, I don't remember how many shows ago it was. Yes, he's going to make mistakes, but you rarely see him make the same mistake twice. Like, he truly does learn from his mistakes, because I don't think we see a play like that in overtime where he takes that sack ever again the rest of the season. He's just getting rid of the football, I think, in that situation going forward. And that's something to be said in a quarterback, to be able to take that criticism and take, a negative play like that and remember and say, hey, I'm not going to make that mistake again. You're not going to fool me twice. We'll get through it once. It's never happening again. And it's rare when you can sit there and criticize, like you said, individual plays. And like Nick said, it's a hell of a perspective to kind of what we're experiencing right now, watching him play quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And there's another quote that I wanted to kind of touch on. That was Courtney Cronin tweeted this out from DJ Moore saying, she asked him about Caleb's big picture development over the last 2 weeks under Thomas Brown. And DJ said, that his confidence is through the roof. He's understanding all the game plans through and through. So to see him go out there and just be able to play quarterback like he wants to is amazing to see. I flagged this quote because I read this and went, okay, there was something going on with we know there was something going on with DJ with someone out there for a good portion of the season. And this makes it really, like, that quote to me makes it seem like it was more Waldron than anything, which is a bit of a relief after seeing, you paid this guy, you drafted a quarterback number 1, and there was some concern about, like, are they not getting along? Like, what's the deal here? So it was just nice to hear that from him.
It really was. And, Matt said this a little bit earlier in the comments here. Thomas Brown only needs to be better than Waldron. It's not a big hole, but I think that's the thing, is sometimes it is just as simple as, kid, go rip it. Like, I don't need to tell you everything that you need to do. And, you hear Caleb talk about that communication, that relationship. And sometimes it's just by freeing up a quarterback like that, you start to see what happens, and you start to see what he can put together, and you see the morale of the team around him improve. I agree. I think at the end of the day, Shane Waldron was the mess, right? Like, he was the pain in the ass that held this offense back, especially after the bye week. I don't know what the fuck happened in that bye week. I really don't.
Something happened.
But it felt like the team went, 6 steps back at the end of it. I don't know. It's nice to see things are changing, but like you said, Q, and I think we do need to get to this part of the show at some point. So I'm going to start to spice it up a little bit here. It's nice to find the good in these wins or these games, but they're not wins. And you can make the argument the Bears probably could have won both of these games very easily, especially when you're at home. And you think back to that Patriots game, and you think back the stretch from Washington, and like ever since the bye week, you sit here and you go, they've had a chance in every single fucking game. And what, 4 of the 5 of them, Caleb has been the one largely giving them a chance at the end to at least do something.
Yeah. I mean, I said in a tweet I sent out after the game, it was part of the like big picture view for me was Caleb has successfully led potential game winning or game tying drives in 3 of the last 4 games, which is huge.
Yeah.
But there is some point where I worry about the mental state of that.
Mm-hmm.
How much more do I have to do to actually win a football game? Like, are we ever going to figure this out? There is the human aspect of that, of falling in a hole,
Mm-hmm.
you get burnout. Anyone who works a job knows what burnout is. They've
100%.
probably been through it, where you're working. You feel like you're not getting anything out of it. And I do have a little concern that could be a factor here. I do want to think that Caleb is different mentally and is a guy who can handle all this and won't end up in that hole. But, I feel like I'm watching rookie Justin Herbert right now.
Mm.
Justin Herbert's been a guy who's struggled to win in this league. And it all started with a rookie year where he kept putting the Chargers in positions to win. And then the Chargers kept finding ways to lose those football games.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Justin Herbert is your turnout, you're happy with it. But like, I hope that there isn't that degrading mental aspect coming with the losses.
100%. And that's where I think most of the frustration too, I think, for Bears fans lies, because you sit here and you say, okay, McCaskies, I don't know if you saw that George was out in the parking lots today talking to fans this morning.
Oh, was he?
Oh yeah. I give him credit. I mean, amidst a 5-game losing streak, you're out in the parking lot talking to fans. Like, kudos to you, because I'm sure he probably heard some things that he probably didn't want to hear today. Let's be honest. Yeah. Bears fans don't hold back. But I think, it is getting to a point where you sit here and you look at the results today, and you go, when does the change come? When does maybe Thomas Brown gets interim head coach for the rest of the season, and you let Washington call the defense? It can't be any worse than what we've seen today. I mean, in overtime, it just felt like they just chipped and chipped and chipped. That 3rd and 13 when Aaron Jones is wide open underneath because they drop 8 to beyond the fucking sticks. It's not even before the sticks. They had guys beyond the sticks. They're more worried about getting beat downfield than just stepping up and making a play on 3rd and 13. And kudos to Kevin O'Connell knowing that was coming and saying, you know what, fuck you. I'm going to run an underneath route. I'm going to trust my receivers to go make a block at the sticks and turn it into a first down.
They got burned on the same concept twice in that, because once was Aaron Jones gets lost behind the line of scrimmage and everyone's just playing fence, fence coverage at the sticks. And like you said, get a body on a body, let him work. Same thing happened with TJ Hawkinson a few plays later, where he peels out off a block. Everyone is standing at the sticks and he's able to read his blocks and find his way. And it's just like, it's infuriating. It's utterly infuriating. And I can't help but sit here and look at Brian Flores, but even to a lower name on like the defensive hierarchy, look at Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah.
Jonathan Gannon is playing defense with a bunch of Madden created players right now and getting incredible results because they are unpredictable. They're psycho. They make you question everything at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. And I feel like the Bears do the opposite. I feel like what's coming so much of the time that it's just, or if you don't know what's coming, you have an idea of like 1 of 2 or 3 things that are coming. And it feels like the best defense in the league right now are so hybrid, so versatile, getting into so many looks out of many different alignments. And the Bears are not one of those defenses. And I feel like that is a severe lacking in the schematics behind the Bears defensive issues right now.
100%. They're not doing anything to create deception. It's, exactly what you're going to get. And it's tough because I get it. A lot of what Eberflus, wants to run is also based on being able to get home with 4 guys. But this front 4 has not been able to get home with 4 guys. They haven't been able to do it all season long. So you have to find ways to bring pressure. How many times did they blitz Jordan Love last week? 3 in that whole game?
Not
I don't
enough.
even, it didn't even feel like Darnold got blitzed today.
I mean, I felt like you got pretty good pressure on him even today. Like I felt like the Bears coverage was just lacking all over. Like I felt like they were pushing that pocket, especially in the second half. I felt like they were bringing the juice at him. If anything, I felt like I saw them blitz a little more than I wanted them to. And the blitzes weren't effective, but I felt like the 4-man rush was doing a decent job with games and stunts. They were getting Montez Sweat on the backup left tackle. Like they were playing some of the matchups and it was working, but it wasn't. I mean, something just kept going wrong, and defensively, it felt like in a chat I'm in, someone mentioned that the defense quit, and I was like, I don't see that. I see players playing hard on this defense. I see high motors, high effort out there, but not disciplined. You know, they were playing 110 miles an hour, but they weren't where they needed to be. They weren't following their technique, their reads, they were missing. Like Terrell Smith probably had the best example of it. He had Aaron Jones dead to rights in the backfield and flies by him and misses the tackle. Like he was flying. He was moving fast. He was playing fast as hard as he could, but he didn't make the play. And that to me on the defensive end was really the biggest issue today was a lack of discipline all around.
Yeah, definitely. And Tim said a little bit earlier here, he says they're missing Brisker. Wonder if he ever plays again. I do think they're missing Brisker, but even then, like there's certain elements of what was going on today that isn't necessarily things, in my opinion, that are going to be influenced by Brisker, right? We all know that Brisker isn't the ideal, half of the field cover safety. That's not what he does. He's a playmaker in his physicality, right? And we saw that in the Carolina game when he forced the big fumble. And yeah, you probably could make the argument that you need kind of that, I'll call it turnover juice, right? From a guy like a Jaquan Brisker. But that doesn't excuse, like you said, like a Terrell Smith not making a play when he needs to, or Tyreek Stevenson not making a play when he needs to. You sit there and then too, but you also sit there and wonder like how much of it is also schematic, right? Because to your point, if you're seeing the energy, you're seeing the effort there, if they're not able to turn around and just execute on that, is it the scheme that's failing them right now? And it sucks because we're sitting here talking about another loss and we're still wondering and scratching our heads and saying, like, where do they go from here? It feels like the offense has gotten their shit figured out. Now it's the defense becoming an issue and needing to get shit figured out. And it's like, it feels like these two units have taken a complete flip-flop from the start of the season, where the defense was keeping the Bears in games and they were keeping them. I don't know what happened this year with the freaking bye week, but it feels like that bye week completely flipped the makeup of the Chicago Bears on its head. And yeah, it led to Shane Waldron getting fired, thankfully, and in a positive sense moving forward. Now you got 2 games of really good tape from the Thomas Brown-led Chicago Bears offense. But it's like you gotta get there. You gotta get there. And Bear Truth says here, he goes, Luce look like he's on a low-carb diet with no energy. How much of it is just he's getting the energy sucked out of him? He's got something like what, 6 of the worst losses in franchise history on his resume?
Second 6-game losing streak in 3 years.
Like, at what point do you just sit there and go, he's probably just drained?
So something that was interesting to me that got said towards the end of the broadcast, Laura Oakman, she said she was speaking to one of the defensive leaders on the Bears, and he said that the players have taken over the leadership of this team, which is something.
Yeah.
Like that screams to me the head coach is an ineffective leader. Maybe the whole defense doesn't feel like they have an effective leader in the coaching department. Now, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to go after Eric Washington. I mean, that doesn't seem valid. But like, if the players are taking over the leadership of the team, that speaks loudly to me that there's a serious issue within the Bears coaching staff, their leadership structure of like, and truly, you'd like to see that at this with where the Bears are at, that they have a strong enough leadership structure among the players to feel that they have a strong leadership despite the coaches. But the fact that it's despite the coaches is, it's not good.
Yeah, it isn't good. And I think too, you've almost seen it with how the offense is playing. Like everybody talks about Thomas Brown as a leader, and guys are practicing harder, and receivers are blocking in practice. Like that's a big deal. And that leadership isn't always just vocal when it comes to coaching. Some of it's just how you carry yourself and the respect that you earn and kind of demand from other grown men around you in this example. And that's what we're seeing right now on the offensive side of the football. And I think that's a huge reason why this offense is playing as well as it is over the last 2 weeks. But then, like you said, you look at the other side and there's no energy, like it's been brought up in our comments. First off, shout out to the comment section. You guys are all popping off and appreciate everybody jumping in. But like it feels like there's no I think that part of that discipline that you mentioned, Q, there's no leadership. So as a result, there's no discipline because you need a good leader in order to be a disciplined anything. And in this case, a disciplined football team.
And the third phase.
Yeah.
Richard Hightower, special teams. It feels like it's lacking there when you have the second straight field goal blocked after losing the last game on the blocked field goal. How does that change this game? If the Bears had 3 more points, if the Bears didn't muff a punt that handed the Vikings 7 points through the ball on the 11-yard line, like that's a huge difference. And Hightower, there's serious questions there from the leadership standpoint too. But one last thing I want to mention, and we got Matt Watley again saying Thomas Brown is a McVay disciple. He could be the answer. And I don't this feels like somewhere between a rock and a hard place to me, because part of me says Bears go hire, say they dole out the cash for Ben Johnson, let Thomas Brown walk, because he's probably not staying as an offensive coordinator for this team, I wouldn't think.
Hell no.
Something in my brain just says Thomas Brown is going to go be a really good head coach somewhere. And, maybe Ben Johnson's just okay here. But say that they stick with Thomas Brown, don't go after a big name. Something in my brain says the opposite. And I just have no trust in this organization to find what they're looking for, because I don't think they know what they want, what they're looking for. And it's a frustrating place to be as a fan. But ultimately, I'm sitting here going, what's the most likely? And I can't help but think the most likely, if Thomas Brown keeps this offense flowing the way it has been, that he's the most likely guy. And we'll see if he gets his chances interim or anything like that. But because I'm sitting here going, Thomas Brown's salary is probably going to fit the McCaskey's budget. Plus, he'll probably keep a lot of the same offensive staff that's here now. So the McCaskies don't have to buy out all those contracts. And there's less egg on Pole's face because Thomas Brown is a guy who he hired.
Yeah.
Right. There's less egg organizationally for everything within the Bears, because they're saying, well, Thomas Brown's been working with Caleb this whole season. There's some continuity there. There's some this, there's some that. Like to me, it seems like if he takes this opportunity and keeps having success with it, I think the McCaskey's choice is pretty clear from a PR standpoint and from a budget standpoint. I don't know that makes it the right answer. I really don't. And one of the toughest things as a fan, as a fanalist or analyst or whatever you want to say, is the coaching decisions. Yeah. Because we've never talked to these guys. We don't hear a lot from these guys. We don't know what they're like in a room. We don't know what they're like teaching a system, teaching a scheme. Like if I'm looking at Thomas Brown and saying, oh yeah, he wants to overhaul the playbook next year, I have no idea if his playbook and scheme are good. I know he's good with Waldron's playbook and Waldron's scheme. Like, so there's a whole level of unknown there that I just don't know if the McCaskies or Kevin Warren or Ryan Poles, I don't know how much I trust them to do it, but I mean, I'm sitting here, I have to trust them. I have no say in it.
Yeah, and an earlier comment from our loyal co-host who was unable to join us here this evening, Mr. Verma. He said he thinks Thomas Brown's doing so well as an OC. 2 games in, he doesn't know if he wants to ruin that momentum and make him the head coach interim. And if that was to happen, obviously it needs the McCaskies to go against everything that they stand for, in the sense of they don't fire people midseason, even though they did that this year. Waldron getting fired was we've never seen a coach that was of that stature, obviously, right? Like the running backs coach got dismissed, and like we saw the DC get dismissed, granted, but that was for different reasons, right? That was not just performance on the field, that was like off the field shit that triggered those firings. This is the first time we've actually seen them from a performance standpoint cut somebody midseason.
Yeah.
Do they continue with that trend? I don't know, but I do like what Sunny says here. Then at the end, he says evaluate, and maybe then you interview him at the end of the year. And I kind of like Atmos a little bit earlier, saying the interim potentially being Washington because of how he's respected around the league. And, I think he's been an assistant head coach before. So maybe he's the right answer if they were to go to that decision. But it just, it's frustrating when you look around and you just go, where does the answer come? Because coaching, it's so hard to get coaching correct. Right? Like, it's so easy to sit here and be like, well, just go get a guy from the McVay tree. Nobody knew McVay was going to be a good head coach. Nobody did. No.
It is incredible how those guys just keep popping off, though.
Right. Oh, sure. Don't get me wrong. I think that speaks a lot to what McVay has become. But even in the case, like Belichick was a great head coach, but his tree flopped on its face. Coaching is so hard to get correct. In my opinion, coaching is just as difficult sometimes as it is just in the player personnel decisions. It's getting the right people in the right room with the right players. Like, it's a whole cohesive thing. And, I know there's been some discussions in the comments section about single plays and things like that. Like, it's football. You can't look at anything from like a single play standpoint that like, oh, this cost us the game. No, not necessarily, right? You can go back and probably find 6 or 7 other decisions throughout the game that might have just as equally weighted that. But it's easier to look at something late in a game and say, well, in hindsight, of course, because it's later in the game. I don't know where they go from here. I really don't. And I think that's part of the frustration, Q, with the Bears continuing to lose is, sure, you probably have Luce the rest of the year, so the defense is going to continue to get cooked. Caleb's going to play hero ball the whole year. He's going to have to if they're going to win any games, it feels like. You evaluate Thomas Brown, but then you sit here and you go, fuck, where do they go from here? And
sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was just saying, and I hope the McCaskies get out of their own way, because it still feels like every time a GM goes to pick a coach, more often than not, the McCaskies help them pick at least the first one, right? Like, they really only get to hire one head coach. Pace really only got to hire Nagy. He kind of got forced into Fox. You know what I mean? It felt that way, kind of. I know they were like, well, he kind of defied the McCaskies and went with Luce, but like, that's still a McCaskey feeling answer. They didn't go out and get any of the big names. So you wonder what the hell is gonna happen, because I'm kind of in the same mindset as our friend here, Scott from Iowa. Nothing changes until the McCaskies don't own the team anymore.
So the second coming.
It's awful, dude.
I mean, so this comment from Bear Truth 9 of Flu's probably gone after the Detroit game on the mini buy. I mean, so this, I know the history. I know all that, but to me, the Bears have never had sound reason to fire a guy in season, right? Like with Nagy, like, what was the purpose of it behind just anger? And I think with this one, there actually could be some purpose. If the Bears offense is chugging against the Lions, you start sitting there saying, we got to see how Thomas Brown handles more responsibility. This is a rare opportunity. We need to find out. And I that's the only reason I do think there is some real reason to think it might happen after that Detroit game, because you're going up against one of the best teams in the conference. If your offense keeps doing it,
teams in the league,
you're sitting there saying, we got to find more. We got to see what this guy brings to the table as a head guy. And one more thought that I had with the idea of Thomas Brown as head guy that does worry me a little is how a problem arises when, he's deciding his staff and like say, he doesn't want Chris Morgan and O-line coach and Jim Dre tight end coach. He said, I got better guys than that. But then running back coach, maybe Chad Morton, says, I feel like those guys got a raw deal. I feel like the guys he brought in aren't as good. Like, I feel like there's some, by not cleaning house in a way, you open up the opportunity for drama. But I just wanted to get that in there. And I also wanted to mention Sunny in the comments. He sent us something before we got on of, Caleb weeks 1 through 10 versus the last 2 games. 1 through 10, he was at almost 61 completion percentage. Last 2, he's at almost 71. Weeks 1 through 10, 198 yards per game. The last 2 weeks is 286 yards per game. And it's probably worth noting, weeks 1 through 10, they might have played some easier opponents, in my mind at least. And then weeks 1 through 10, 9-5, touchdown to interception. Last 2 weeks, 2-0. Weeks 1 through 10, 81 passer rating versus 99.9 passer rating. And the last 2 weeks are Thomas Brown's 2 games. So, like, we talked last week about we probably need a 4 to 5 game sample to really understand this better.
Yeah.
And what he's bringing to the table better. We're halfway into a 4-game sample now, and we're still feeling good. At 3 weeks, I mean, that's when we were just saying maybe that's when Luce is gone. They said we got to see more. I could see maybe you jump the trigger on that, but ultimately, I kind of think I'd like to see 4 weeks before you do that, at least, because then you get a feel of like, okay, there's 3 games on tape. Then how did he handle that next opponent? And you go from there, because it's still so early in the process of analyzing what Thomas Brown is.
Oh, 100%. And I think you bring up a great point, though, in the terms of like Brown has kind of emerged in circles. Like, Ryan Poles reads NFL.com and things like that. Like, these GMs see that stuff. Anyone that tells you they don't see the noise is a liar. But you wonder.
People still read NFL.com?
Sometimes. But I think at the end of the day, you wonder if Ryan Poles kind of already knows, like, hey, I assume Thomas Brown's going to get head coaching interviews this winter. At least a few. Maybe he doesn't get a head coaching job, but he's at least going to get interviews. Like you said, you can have him on a free trial run at the end of the season if they really feel like that's where they're going. Or if they say, hey, we love Thomas Brown, but, he's going to move on and go from there or whatever, do we, what happens, right? Like, do they already have their mind made up that like, hey, we're probably just going to go out of house after the season? We also don't know, right? So lots to consider. It's going to be interesting. Definitely going to be, I think everybody's going to have their kind of, all of our, all Bears fans are probably going to hold our collective breath, because if they get their brakes beat off on Thursday, that doesn't sound right. Pardon me. Pause. If they get the doors blown off, that sounds a lot better. Then I think again, everything just gets louder week after week with the fire Luce and things like that. So, I mean, if they walk into Detroit and Detroit 40 pieces them, it's like 42-21 or some shit like that. It's going to get really, really loud come, Black Friday. And you wonder, they called it Monday after the NFL regular season, Black Monday. Do we get a little Black Friday magic in Chicago Bears head coaching circle? Who knows?
Happy Thanksgiving. Who knows? But with that being said, let's get into some of our other segments here.
The baddest man.
All right, Ron, where are you going for your baddest man on the Bears offense?
It'd be very easy to sit here, obviously, and take Caleb, right?
Yeah.
And I think we've collectively gushed over Caleb already, so I'm going to avoid Caleb. Caleb would be my crowning choice, but I think a guy that needs to get some love today is DJ Moore, and the reason for that being, I think Thomas Brown has done a wonderful job giving DJ Moore opportunities to do what he does best, which is after he gets the football in his hands. I mean, he is arguably a running back receiver hybrid type player in terms of his skill set, finding open lanes and, making guys miss and setting up blocks. We got to see Braxton out in space. seeing DJ do what he's doing in that screen game right now, it forces the rest of the roster to have to be respected as well. You know, we've seen what Rome can do in a couple of these recent weeks. We've seen now Keenan had his best day today as, you know, as a Chicago Bear so far. It's nice to see how they use DJ. And I kind of like Tim's comment here. And he says they use DJ like kind of like a Deebo Samuel. And they have been the last 2 weeks. We saw that kind of the week before too. DJ is a very unique football player. And for me, he's my baddest man. He made a big catch at the end of the game to help them set up that field goal chance. You know, DJ had a good game, and DJ looks like that $110 million receiver again, which I think is at the end of the day what we're all really happy about too. So I'm gonna roll with DJ Moore as my baddest man pick for today.
Yeah, and I think going outside of Caleb, DJ is. I think that's hands down the pick. He had a huge day today. He really just showed out in almost every possible way he could. 7 catches, 7 targets, 106 yards, a touchdown, added in 13 yards rushing. Like he was a force today. But
and Q, quickly before you share your baddest man, Sunny put it perfectly on our preview show this week. One of the keys he mentioned on Tuesday: give your best player the football. And that's what they've been continuing to do with DJ Moore. They're getting into DJ, letting him do his thing, and it's paying dividends. Sure, it's great when, you know, Caleb makes the big, fancy, flashy throws, but it's also nice just having a weapon like DJ Moore where you just got to throw a screen pass and you got to hit him in the numbers and let DJ do the rest, because then it just opens up the rest of the offense. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And so I'm going with Keenan. And this took a lot longer than I thought it would. And truly, I mean, the guy had 15 targets today. You'd like to see a few more. There was a drop in there at one point, but dude put up 86 yards and a touchdown. He came up with some tough contested catches in small windows. I think part of that comes from his losing a bit of a step this year, to put it nicely. But, you know, the guy delivered a lot today, especially early in the game. He helps the Bears set the tone offensively, get that first score. He was huge on that first score. So I'm going with Keenan there with Caleb and DJ out of the picture. But defensively, Ron, where are you going? This one's a tough one for baddest man.
Yeah, this one is a tough one. You know what I liked today? I think we got one of those disruption plays that I desperately needed to see, and I'm hoping it means we're going to see more of it out of him. I'm going to give Montez Sweat some love today. I think he really kind of played the first game. I think he's also fully healthy finally, which certainly helps in terms of just him being the disruptor he is at the defensive end position. It was nice to see him make a couple of those plays in the run game and just blowing up. Like you said, they matched him up on the backup left tackle when Robinson goes down. You know, they're giving him different looks to get him to the quarterback, getting him in the backfield and letting him disrupt. That was nice. It was nice to see. And I think we desperately wanted, we kind of talked about it, right? We wanted that, you know, that Montez Sweat game. And, you know, we're not quite there, obviously, with today's performance, but it was good to start seeing some of that explosion come back to him. I think he's finally healthy for the first time really all year.
Yeah.
And I hope we continue to see that now down the stretch here, because, you know, you got a really good offensive line coming up this week with Detroit, but then you got some ability maybe, right? With some weaker offensive lines, kind of similar to Minnesota's, where maybe Montez Sweat can be that disruptor again. So I'm going to give my nod to Montez because I think he finally looked like the bull in a china shop that he is. And I think that deserves some baddest man discussion.
Yeah, and so today Sweat had a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. So I mean it's a great
damn
choice.
good day.
It wasn't my first choice, but he's up there. He's right up there. As is, I think Javon Dexter had a really nice day, so he's up there for me too. And so is DeMarcus Walker. Like I said, the Bears had 9 QB hits today. I think their pressure, like they did a good job getting pressure on Darnold overall, even if they didn't get it home quite as much as I wanted it to. But this was the best game I've ever seen Tremaine Edmonds play in a Bears uniform. He was all over the field. He was flying around. This was the fastest I've seen him play. He was breaking up passes in the deep middle. He was making tackles in the backfield. He was always second guy to the football, it felt like, always getting the cleanup tackles. I mean, I don't think his stat line does it justice. Like 9 total tackles, 4 solo, 1 pass defensed. He covered a wide range of the field today. And I think that needs to be discussed for, you know, they gave Minnesota some trouble through points in this game defensively. Like, it didn't end well, but I thought Tremaine Edmonds was doing everything in his power to win this football game. And I thought like his effort was there. He was flying. I wish that he played with this type of instinct that he played today all the time, because he looked outstanding.
He really did. I will say this about Edmonds. If you look at where the big plays came from Minnesota, none of them were in his portion of the field. So you knew he was getting those looks over the middle and taking a lot of things away. And I agree here with Laz. I think we do got to give love to Jalen Johnson and what he did today, because, everybody else is letting up, big plays and stuff. But Jalen, Jettas didn't see much at all today. Like we said a little bit earlier in the show, Jettas, everybody knows when they play the Bears to stay away from Jalen Johnson. And there's a reason for that, because everybody is targeting Smith and Stevenson, and then the windows in the field where they know there's going to be some soft coverage, whether that's a Jonathan Owens playing in those areas today, whether that's a Kevin Byard has been taken advantage of a couple of times in recent weeks. I think Jalen had a good game. I think we got to give love to Jalen where it is.
And Jonathan Biles Owens did a lot forcing that big fumble at the start of the game. It almost had that interception later on. But to your point, like Jalen, I think he's going to take a little heat for the touchdown he allowed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't if I'm a coach, I'd probably sit there and you could grill him of like, you got to keep your head on a swivel. But like, he had Justin Jefferson running a corner behind him. I get it. Like, I get how that happened. Like, I'm not too upset over that. But let's move on to the next segment here.
The nicest man.
Ron, who's your nicest man on the Bears offense?
I desperately needed that puppy after today's game. That always makes my day that much better. Nicest man on offense. This one, I really don't have a specific player, but I have a room that I'm going to call out. And I wish they got more going in the running game. So I think that aspect of the offensive line, I kind of wish. I thought they did a great job in terms of picking up blitzes and things like that. I really do. I think overall in the passing game, they largely kept Caleb clean. This was another solid performance. I'm looking forward to our O-line film room on Tuesday, because I think we're going to see a lot of good, and I'm excited about that. But I wish they could get that run game going a little bit more, and I feel like that was kind of missing. So I'm going to go with the offensive line only because of the running game and kind of the lack of what was there. It was nice to see Roschon get the touchdown, but somebody put it in the comments earlier. I think he only had like 2 carries the whole time. You sit there and you hope and you wonder, like, okay, when is that running game going to come back? Because we've seen those big games from DeAndre Swift and how much that helps the offense when he's humming too. So that's kind of where I'm leaning with the room today is kind of the offensive line, more so specifically in the run game and in the run blocking scheme.
Yeah, I agree with you, really. I was sitting here going, like, do I put it on Swift? Do I put it on the O-line? Like, Swift, it was a rougher day. 13 carries for 30 yards, 2.3 yards per attempt, longest run only 8 yards. He did have a 35 or 30-yard catch that, on that beautiful play from Caleb, but where he leaks out and then finds Swift running the was it like the Texas route down the sideline, just gorgeous. But ultimately, I think I have to put it on the O-line. I have to review. Some of it might have been Swift dancing too much or like not being decisive in his holes. I'm not sure till I get the O-line tape and take another look at what I'm actually seeing from a better angle to see what is actually there on each run. But ultimately, it goes on the run game. So that's where I'm going with my nicest man too. One way or the other, I'm agreeing with you. I don't think there's anyone else you can really look at or any other aspect you can say that was a letdown. But defensively, Ron, where are you going for your nicest man? You're on mute.
I haven't done that in a long time. I've been really good about it, but my dumbass was going to get caught eventually. I got to go with QB2. Like, I think just every big play was coming from other parts of the field. Like we talked about earlier, right? If you're going to take away Jettas, TJ Hawkinson's going to get you. Aaron Jones is going to get you. Jordan Addison's going to get you. And Jordan Addison got them today a lot. Big plays down the field, the touchdown, obviously. It would be hard to not say cornerback 2. So that's kind of where I'm pinning this is, the guys that are playing opposite of JJ need to play better, because otherwise they're just going to get over targeted and as a result be under, less effective in terms of pass coverage.
Yeah, I mean, so I was going with Terrell Smith on this to be a bit more frank with it. Tyreek Stevenson appeared to get benched at some point in the game again. So maybe he deserves it more for not being available to his team or not being reliable to his team. But I mean, Terrell Smith got cooked by Jordan Addison a few times, and that just when you're focusing on Justin Jefferson,
yeah,
your CB2 needs to be up to the task, because Jordan Addison is a good receiver in his own right, and you can't be allowing him to beat you the way that Terrell Smith was allowing him to beat him. So that's where I'm going with that. Now let's move on to our final segment here.
Keys to victory.
In this segment, we are going through our 3 keys to victory that we put together in the game preview. If you don't check them out, every Tuesday or Wednesday, we are coming to you with a game preview episode where Ron, myself, and Sunny are laying out our 3 keys to victory. Then we write them up and go put them over at ontapsportsnet.com. Our first one this week, and we always want to review these after the game to make sure we get better with them and we learn from them. First one was from Sunny. Let the playmakers, specifically DJ Moore, make plays. And Ron, I think this one was pretty clear. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think Sunny nailed it on the head, and they executed on that, right? Give DJ Moore the ball in space. Had a couple of big plays in the screen game today. Had some big catches over the middle of the field. Keenan getting the ball in his hands a lot more and being able to do some things. And we didn't see a ton of Rome Odunze today, but we got to see him a little bit. Cole Kmet was heavily utilized in short yardage. Let him bull forward and be a bitch to tackle. I think they did a splendid job getting the ball in playmakers' hands. All was right. I think that key we absolutely nailed. They gave it to their playmakers, and their playmakers did the job.
I agree. I mean, I think this one's pretty cut and dry. They did a great job, especially getting into DJ Moore. And because Scott commented this, I have to mention it. The nicest guy in the field was the NFL officials and the dumb rule that you can't use the boundary camera on coaches' challenges, only scores plays, because of an inequity idea, because not every stadium has this camera view. That was the dumbest thing I heard all day. Like, if the NFL is really worried about not letting them use a certain camera view because not every stadium has it, that's just the biggest crock of BS I've heard, because it's just all about getting the call right. That's what it all should be about. If you have the NFL sitting in New York being able to overturn something, every view should be on the table. Like, that's just ludicrous. But anyways, back to our keys to the game. Unless, Ron, did you have any thoughts on that?
Nope, I think you nailed it perfectly.
Okay. Second key to the game was from you, and this was just manage the blitz. Brian Flores is one of the most innovative blitzers in the league, one of the most creative blitzers in the league, and you said this was the biggest key to the game for you. How do you think they did on this?
I think they did overall pretty well. I mean, obviously Caleb was under pressure at times, certainly made some incredible plays when he was under pressure. But I think overall, over the course of the full game, I think the offensive line did a good job managing the blitz. I think, again, the blitz still got home, right? Everybody pointed out in the comments so far tonight, the big sack at the end, things like that, right? That's all part of the blitz scheming and what Brian Flores does as a DC. But overall, I thought they did a really strong job. And there was a lot of plays where you saw Caleb standing back there and he's got a clean pocket because the offensive line knew what they needed to do. And again, I've said it before on Bears on Tap. It's been a while since I've had to say it, but cohesion is the most important aspect of the offensive line. because it's one of the hardest positions in terms of you need to communicate and you need to understand the guys that are playing next to you. When you have constant turnover and injuries, it's hard for your offensive line to get into a rhythm. When the offensive line is healthy, you see what happens. These guys can start to communicate better. And sure, maybe the Coleman Shelton is still going to get beat. Maybe a Matt Pryor isn't the ideal right guard, but at least you have your starters are back in there. Everybody's used to playing with each other, right? Tevin and Braxton have played next to each other a ton. We've seen Darnell Wright play with Pryor quite a bit this year. They have that communication. I think overall they did a really nice job managing the blitz.
So he took 3 sacks today. One of them was him running out of bounds, where he should have thrown the football away, like a half yard behind the line of scrimmage. So that's barely even a real sack in my mind. I'll have to look at the time before he had to scramble, but if my memory serves me right, it was protected well enough, and he just held the ball a little longer and ended up scrambling out. But the second one was the one where Braxton, the inside move on Braxton, where Tev is a little tardy to get to the help, and that window is too open for the edge rusher, whoever you want to put that on, Brax or Tev. I think both of them deserve some blame there.
Sure.
But the third one was in overtime. So in regulation, 2 sacks, only one of them I can really put on the O-line. I think they did a beautiful job managing it today, and I'm very impressed by the Bears O-line today. I think that from a pass protection standpoint, I think it's the second straight game where they played as a unit and found answers against a front that is hard to find answers against.
100%.
The final key to the game was mine. And at first I said I need to see Caleb's moxie, and I wasn't sure if I worded that right. I ended up writing it up as Caleb needs to play chess with Brian Flores. And I still didn't love that. It's I didn't know how to make it short enough to really fit it. But it was Caleb needs to manage the chess match against Brian Flores. And the way I worded this was, what makes Brian Flores such an impressive defensive coordinator? He's not going to play chess with your play caller. He's going to play chess with your quarterback. He's going to make your quarterback get in the game with him, get in the mental game with him, and he's going to challenge him. And Caleb answered. Caleb answered in spades today. He had one of the best games of the year against this Vikings defense that a passer has had. I'm so impressed by what he did today against this Brian Flores defense, the way he managed the blitz. He was managing the protection calls. He was changing the protections for a front that was constantly changing on him. I mean, we can look at how Justin Fields managed against the same similar Brian Flores defense, a few different players with the same concepts. And it was night and day what we saw from Caleb today. Just outstanding job from him. So what we're saying here is the Bears hit on all 3 of our keys to victory, and they lost.
Yeah, they didn't win.
I think we nailed them, though.
I think we did. But at the end of the day, you look at it, right? It's not like this team got blown out. Everything that we said that they would need to do to have a chance to get a win, they did, and they executed on those. And you see what happens. It's a 3-point game. You have a chance in overtime. They're right there. But I agree with you. Holy hell, is that infuriating when we nail the keys to victory and the keys to victory come up in a loss.
Yeah. I do think in future, I want to focus on getting at least one defense. All 3 were offensive, and the defense allowed 30 points today, something like that. So yeah, 30 points, 27 in regulation. So I think that there's probably a defensive key that we were missing. And truly in my mind, thinking about it, I'm probably going with more of an attacking mindset, or I would say don't hyper focus on Justin Jefferson. That would be the defensive key that in hindsight that I would throw in there, because I think that's what really killed them today. And you need to live with what Justin Jefferson does at that point. But
right.
I think that's better than going over the top on stopping him.
I agree. And I think too, because when you do take him away to an extent, but you let him still be a part of the offense, I think you have a chance to bait offenses into turnovers. We saw it last year against Minnesota on that Monday night game. They were able to take the ball away. Now, granted, obviously it was very different quarterbacks. It wasn't Sam Darnold, who's having a really good season and everything like that. But they were really able to bait Dobbs into making some bad throws. And ultimately, because they were allowing other guys to get involved in the offense, but still, hey, go get Jettas if you need to. But we got two guys over here. So when you see Jalen, come off and make that interception, you need more of those type of plays. So I agree with you. I think in hindsight, that would have been a hell of a key. And they didn't execute on that one because they did hyper-focus on Jay Jettas. And then we saw Hawkinson and Jones and Addison just completely dice up this Bears defense over the course of the entire day.
Yeah. So, Ron, any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
I want to see winning football. Like I know we talked about some of the good, and we talked about the elephant in the room in terms of the head coach, and I think we nailed just about everything in terms of the world of Chicago Bears football. It's a short week. We're coming back quickly on Tuesday, and Thursday's game day already. But let's be honest, losing sucks. And I hate that they keep finding new ways to lose. Like, go find new ways to win, not lose. So I'm not optimistic for Thursday. And obviously we'll elaborate on that in our preview show this week. Not optimistic at all. The Lions are a buzzsaw. But, like, give yourself a chance. They're beatable. This Bears team last year had a chance to beat them. They're beatable.
The Colts held them today to 21 points. Colts have a pretty
24
similar
points,
defensive
maybe.
philosophy to Flu's. I mean,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, but they only scored 6. So
yeah. Well, that defense. I will say this. I think about the Lions from last year. That offense is still humming on about the same level, if not even at a higher level, I think, this season. But that defense is what really took a humongous step forward, in my opinion, for the Lions, and why I think they're a very different football team than a year ago. That, to me, is going to be the key. It's, hey, can you put up points on that defense and find a way? Teams have done it. Like, there's blueprints out there. Obviously, they're not undefeated, but they're a hard team. They're a hard team to beat up on, and I just want to see wins, Q. That's where we're getting to right now. I just want to see some wins.
yeah. So final thoughts from me. First things first, shout out to Billy Cusis on Facebook. Thank you for liking our stuff. Buddy of mine from high school. I haven't seen him in years, but shout out to you, Billy. And then secondly, back on the Bears. Caleb hung 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and took 3 sacks against a Brian Flores defense that chews up and spits out rookie quarterbacks today. Third sack was not okay in overtime. But that's the only major blemish I took away from Caleb today. Like we said, there might have been a few turnover-worthy throws in there, but really only one of them I felt like was egregious, and that was in gotta go time. Like, that was in you need to start making plays time, and I can live with that one. So I think about how recent Bears quarterbacks have looked against this Flores defense, and it was just different. Caleb had the answers. He took his chances when they were available, and he operated the offense at a high level against this defense that's one of the harder ones in the league to process from the quarterback position.
Definitely.
This loss stings. I can't say that any losses the rest of the year are going to sting like last week or the Washington loss, but especially last week. That one just that crushed me. At this point, the losses, they're just not going to hurt the same anymore because my expectations have changed. But the rest of this season, it's about growth and development at the quarterback position. It's about finding out what you have in Thomas Brown, maybe giving him a chance for some more responsibility. And I feel like we saw growth in both those areas today. So I can't help but take away good things from today, even in a losing effort that stinks, because I believe Luce is gone either way. It's about finding what you have beyond that.
Well said, my friend. Well said.
Well, Ron, what do you say we get out of here the only way we know how?
Bear down, baby.
Bear down.